I could have backed away, could have said something to stop this madness, but instead, I just squeezed his shirt tighter, as if afraid that he would disappear if I let go. It seemed the moment would last forever. The evening of July 15th was balmy, graced by a gentle breeze that carried the sweet fragrance of blooming linden trees from the garden. It was my 52nd birthday, and I had resolved to celebrate it quietly, without any unnecessary fuss. Lena, my daughter, called in the morning, profusely apologizing for her inability to come due to work commitments, but promising to visit over the weekend. I didn't object, having grown accustomed to solitude in the old house on the edge of town. The table in the living room was set modestly, adorned with a bottle of red wine, a selection of fresh fruits, a cake that I had baked myself, and candles that cast a soft, warm glow, reflecting in the windows. I donned my best dress, a dark green, form-fitting number with a plunging neckline that accentuated the figure I was still proud of. My hair, now streaked with silver, was left loose, cascading gently over my shoulders. It was my evening, and I wanted to feel alive. A knock at the door echoed just as I was pouring wine into my glass. I was taken aback, as I wasn't expecting any guests. Approaching the door cautiously, I peered through the peephole and froze. Standing on the porch was Sergey, Lena's husband, clad in a dark shirt, the top button undone, and carrying a bottle of something in his hand. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and his eyes held that same daring, almost predatory glint that had always made my heart skip a beat. Even though I tried to conceal it, I opened the door, striving to maintain a composed demeanor. "Sergey," I said, raising an eyebrow, "Lena didn't mention you were coming." He smiled, and it wasn't the smile he usually displayed around Lena, polite and somewhat detached, but rather a smile that felt deeply personal, almost intimate. "Lena is busy," he replied, his voice low, with a slight rasp that invariably sent shivers down my spine. He added, "But I couldn't miss your birthday, Anna. I brought a gift." He extended a bottle of champagne, and his fingers brushed against mine as I took it. It was a fleeting touch, but it seared like a spark. "Thank you," I said, stepping back to allow him into the house. "But you could have simply called." He entered the living room, glancing around as if he were seeing it for the first time. His presence filled the room, and I suddenly felt that my dress was too tight, too revealing. "Called?" he chuckled, placing the bottle on the table. "It's not the same as congratulating you in person. You look stunning, Anna." I felt my cheeks flush and turned away to hide my embarrassment, pouring champagne into the glasses. His compliment wasn't mere politeness. There was something more in his voice, something that made my heart pound faster. "It's just a dress," I replied, attempting to sound casual, but my voice wavered. "Sit down since you're here." He sat at the table, but his gaze remained fixed on me. I felt it like a physical touch, gliding over my shoulders, the neckline of my dress, the curve of my waist. It was wrong, I knew, but something in that gaze stirred within me, a long-forgotten feeling, the desire to be seen, to be desired. I placed a glass before him, and our fingers brushed once more, this time lingering longer than necessary. We spoke of trivial things, the garden, the weather, Lena, but each of his words, each glance, was like a game, a challenge. He leaned in closer than necessary, his hand accidentally brushing mine as he reached for the fruit. And each such moment was like a spark igniting something within. "You are always so strict, Anna," he said suddenly, when the wine in our glasses was nearly empty. But I know there is another side to you, a more free side. I froze, feeling his words penetrate beneath my skin. You know nothing about me, I replied, but my voice was softer than I intended, and there was an undercurrent of uncertainty. He leaned across the table, his face so close that I could feel the warmth of his breath. Sergei, I whispered, and my voice was almost a plea. This is wrong. He smiled, and his smile was predatory, full of confidence. Then stop me, he said, and his hand tightened on mine, warm and strong, preventing me from pulling away. I remained silent, and that silence was my consent. Do you want me to find out? He asked, and his hand slowly, almost lazily, slid across the table, touching mine. It was a light touch, but it burned like fire. I should have pulled away, should have reminded him of Lena, that he was her husband, but instead I gazed into his eyes, feeling my body betray me, responding to his proximity. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. He stood up, walked around the table, and in the next instant, his arms were around my waist, pulling me close. His lips found mine, and the kiss was like an explosion, greedy, demanding, full of a passion I hadn't felt in years. I responded, unable to resist, my hands clutching his shirt, pulling him closer. He lifted me, and I felt my feet leave the floor as he pressed me against him, his hands gliding over my body, hiking up my dress. I felt alive, desired, and in that moment, nothing but his hands, his lips, his body mattered. His lips trailed down my neck, weaving a burning trail that seemed to sear the skin to the bone. I was breathless from the sensation, from his hands that gripped my hips with such force, as if he feared I would dissolve into thin air. The dress half slipped down, hung on me like an unnecessary detail, and I felt his fingers, warm and insistent, finding the skin beneath, exploring every curve with a hunger that made my heart pound like a trapped bird. The room, illuminated by the soft glow of candles, seemed unreal, like a dream. But his touch was too vivid, too real, for me to pretend it was merely a fantasy. Anna, his voice, hoarse and low, was almost a growl, as he pulled away to look at me. His eyes, dark pools flecked with gold, burned, and I saw in them not only desire, but also something else, an admiration that made me feel not just like a woman, but something more, almost divine. You're incredible. I wanted to respond, to say something to regain control, but the words drowned in a new kiss, even greedier than the first. His tongue explored my mouth, demanding, taking, and I responded with the same passion, my hands clutching his shirt, tearing it from his shoulders. The fabric fell to the floor, and I gasped at the sight of his body, strong, with clear lines of muscle, slightly glistening with sweat in the warm candlelight. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. 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 Making me forget everything but this moment. My fingers moved of their own volition, sliding over his chest, feeling the warmth and hardness, and he let out a low moan that resonated within me, a heat spreading low in my belly. He lifted me, and in the next instant, I was on the table amidst glasses and plates that clinked as he pressed me against him. Champagne spilled, cold drops landing on my skin, but it only intensified the sensation, mixing the cold with the heat of his hands. I didn't know how much time had passed, minutes, hours, but when he slowed, his breath was heavy, and my legs were still trembling, hugging him. His lips found mine, and the kiss was softer, almost tender, as if he were trying to say something that words could not express. I lay beneath him, feeling my body still pulsating, feeling his warmth enveloping me. And in that moment, I didn't want to think about what would happen next. We lay on the sofa, intertwined like two people who had survived a shipwreck, clinging to each other in an attempt to stay afloat. His breath, still heavy, touched my neck, and his hand lazily glided over my thigh, leaving behind a trail of goosebumps. My skin was damp with sweat, his and mine, and I felt my heart slowly return to a normal rhythm, although inside, the fire still raged. The candles on the table were burning down, their light casting shadows on the walls, and in this dimness, everything seemed unreal, like a dream from which I didn't want to wake. I turned my head, avoiding his gaze, and stared at the ceiling, where the shadows trembled as if reflecting my turmoil. Lena, her name flashed in my head like a strike, and I felt guilt begin to choke me, slowly but surely. What had I done? It wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was a betrayal from which there was no washing away. But even that thought could not completely drown out the warmth of his body, still pressed against me, or the memory of how his hands, his lips, had made me feel alive, desired, full of fire. Sergei stirred, his fingers gently touching my chin, forcing me to look at him. His eyes, dark and deep, were no longer as hungry, but they still burned, and there was something in them that I could not decipher. A mixture of satisfaction, tenderness, and perhaps a slight challenge. "Are you okay?" he asked, and his voice was quieter than before, almost caring. This surprised me, and I felt my throat constrict with unbidden emotions. "No," I answered honestly, and my voice was hoarse, almost foreign. This was wrong, Sergei, Lena." He sighed but did not release me, his hand remaining on my thigh, warm and heavy. "Lena won't find out," he said, and there was not a hint of doubt in his tone. "It's our secret, Anna, only ours." I wanted to object, wanted to say that secrets have a way of surfacing, destroying everything in their path, but his fingers began to slowly slide over my skin. And I trembled, despite all attempts to maintain clarity of thought. He leaned in, his lips touching my shoulder softly, almost weightlessly, but it was enough for the heat to begin to spread through my body again. "Stop it," I whispered, but my voice was weak, and I knew he heard not protest in it, but something else. "We can't do it again." He raised his head, and his smile was the same daring, almost predatory smile. But now it had something else in it, something that made my heart clench. "Sergei," I breathed, and that was all I could say before his lips covered mine. And I drowned again in that kiss, as greedy as the first, but now with a hint of something deeper, almost desperate. My hands, as if of their own accord, found his hair, tangled in it, pulling him closer. I knew it was madness, knew that every new moment with him was another step into the abyss, but I couldn't stop. "Why not?" he asked, and his hand slid higher to the curve of my waist, squeezing it with a light but commanding force. "You felt it, Anna." This was... He trailed off, searching for the word, real. I closed my eyes, trying to ward off his words, his touch, but it was useless. He was right. It was real. Too real. I hadn't felt so alive in years, and that scared me no less than the guilt. His lips found my shoulder again, then my neck, and I couldn't hold back a soft moan when his teeth lightly nipped my skin. He pulled away just for a moment to look at me, and his gaze was like a burn. "You're too beautiful to hide," he said, and his fingers slid over my body, finding places that were still trembling from his previous touches. "Let me, just once more, Anna, just once." I wanted to say no, wanted to push him away, but instead I arched toward him, my legs wrapped around him, and he let out a low, satisfied purr that resonated in me with a new wave of desire. His hands were everywhere. His lips followed them. I lost track of time, lost myself in this whirlwind where there was nothing but him, me, and this forbidden, all-consuming fire. But somewhere deep behind this blaze, I heard a quiet voice reminding me of Lena, of what would happen when she returned. I knew that this evening, whatever it might be, would leave a mark that I could not erase. His lips found mine again, and I drowned in that kiss, like in a deep, dark sea where there was neither top nor bottom, only the heat and rhythm of our bodies. Sergei pressed me to the couch, his hands sliding over my skin, finding every curve, every point that made me tremble. My fingers dug into his shoulders, leaving marks, and I felt his muscles tense under my touch, felt his breath become heavier. "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." It was madness, but so sweet, so all-consuming, that I couldn't stop, even knowing that every new moment with him was another nail in the coffin of my conscience. "Anna," he whispered, pulling away from my lips to look me in the eyes. His gaze was dark, full of desire, but in it flickered something else, something akin to vulnerability, as if he too understood that we had crossed a line from which there was no turning back. It was like a dance, like a storm where every thrust, every moan merged into one, carrying us further and further away from reality. I lost track of time. The candles on the table burned out, and the room was plunged into semi-darkness, but the moonlight, breaking through the curtains, outlined his silhouette, making him even more attractive. His hands, his lips, his body, all of it was like a drug, and I was too weak to resist. When a wave of pleasure washed over me, I cried out his name, and he followed me. His breathing became ragged, and his body tensed before relaxing, pressing against me. We lay in silence, our bodies still intertwined, and I felt his heart beat beneath my palm, in sync with mine. But this moment of peace was fragile, like glass, and I knew that it was about to break. I pulled away slowly, almost reluctantly, and sat up, pulling up my dress to cover myself. Reality was returning, cold and merciless, and with it came the guilt that seemed to be waiting for its hour. "It was a mistake," I said quietly, not looking at him, my voice trembling. but I forced myself to continue. It should never have happened, Sergey. Lena, she's my daughter. He opened his mouth to object, but I raised my hand, stopping him. Don't, I said. Just go, please. He looked at me for another moment, and I was afraid that he would start arguing. But he just nodded, slowly, almost reluctantly. He got up, picking up his shirt from the floor. I turned away, unable to watch him dress, unable to watch him leave. He sat up next to me. His hand touched my shoulder, but I pulled away, not allowing him to draw me into this vortex again. Lena won't find out, he said, and his voice was calm, but there was tension in it. It was just a moment, Anna. We both wanted it. It's not an excuse, I replied, finally looking at him. His face was serious, but in his eyes, there were still sparks of the fire that had burned us both. We betrayed her. I betrayed her. The door slammed shut, and the silence that followed was deafening. I was left alone, sitting on the couch, surrounded by the smell of champagne, wax, and his cologne. My hands trembled as I raised them to my face, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. I didn't cry, didn't allow myself, but inside, everything was torn by contradictions. I felt alive, desired, but at the same time dirty, as if this evening had left a stain on me that I couldn't wash away. We spoke of trivial things, the garden, the weather, Lena, but each of his words, each glance, was like a game, a challenge. He leaned in closer than necessary, his hand accidentally brushing mine as he reached for the fruit. And each such moment was like a spark igniting something within. You are always so strict, Anna, he said suddenly, when the wine in our glasses was nearly empty. I tried to keep myself busy, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, felt him, and it was like a poison that I couldn't banish. Lena returned as promised, cheerful, with a gift and apologies for missing my birthday. I smiled, hugged her, but inside, everything constricted with guilt. She didn't notice anything, and I was grateful for it. But I knew that this secret would live in me like a shadow. Sergey didn't come alone anymore, and I didn't know whether he himself had decided to keep his distance or whether he had felt that I wouldn't allow it to happen again. But sometimes, when he was with Lena, I caught his gaze, short but full of the same fire, and my heart skipped a beat. I decided that this evening would remain my secret. I couldn't tell Lena, couldn't destroy her world, but I also couldn't deny that he had awakened something in me that I thought had long died.